He's gonna put it right on these guys.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm not in sight, right? Okay.
Need you in sight too. Need a co-star.
Yay!
Right. So you made it.
I did.
And we observe a lot of things in your classroom, and so we want to start off with those things that you're doing well.
Because girl, there are so many of them. Honestly, like there is so much that I just want to say to the camera. Like we need to get the camera in your room like daily. Because there is so many, seriously, there are so many things that you're doing that our teachers can learn from. Even I learned from some things. I was like, oh, I didn't know that spoons in the bowl. I was like, spoons in the bowl. Spoons in the bowl. Like, I was feeling it. I really was.
Yeah, so
good.
It was one of the routines that we saw that we actually liked. Spoons in the bowl. Your scholars knew what it meant. They knew exactly what to do with their hands. They knew exactly what to do with their eyes. They tracked you. Speaking of tracking, when you had your scholars follow you, they would move and position their body.
Yeah, and they did it fast too. Like you were fast. Good.
And the movement breaks. The movement breaks that you have in between between activities, the calming activities to calm them down, because their body has got so much energy in them that they need to calm down. And just seeing little Daniel just like, oh, I need 10. He was really into it. Yeah, and just your overall like celebration of kids when they were meeting your expectations or they were successful in something, you celebrated your kids. So very good job for those days.
Thank you.
I mean, honestly, like there is no doubt in my mind that you are thinking about the child. Like from all of the, like Hamlin said, like the movement of their bodies, the calming breaks, your energy, you're very purposeful in choosing certain scholars to do certain things. You are, like when JC said relentless, I didn't quite get it until I saw it. And it's because you don't give up. You love what you do. It seeps through the pores in your body. And smiles all over their faces because you're thinking about them with your activities that you're choosing. And so that's just so inspiring to see that, I think.
Yeah, and to Tracy's point about selecting scholars and being purposeful in that, can you talk to us why you selected Daquan to actually stand in the chair and kind of lead that activity?
Well, I try to really make sure I can catch him early on the day, like because he started off really strong. But typically, if I can get him at the beginning of the day just to feel successful and engaged and really a part, then I know he's also a great leader, so he'll kind of pull the other ones in as well. So if they see him, they want to kind of follow along as well. So just giving him that opportunity, he loves just to be able to help and things like that. So when I saw that he's eager to help and he wants to be involved, then I try to utilize that opportunity, very purposefully. And the kids usually back him up with praise too when they, sing up there. So I don't hear too much complaining about, oh, he's up there again or, whatever. So they like, when he's able to lead. But yeah, that's pretty much just to kind of help pull him in and encourage him at the beginning of the day.
And why is that important, to have him engaged and in that activity? What happens if you don't have him engaged?
At times, he'll just either start talking to another teammate, or his hands might get busy, things like that. So giving him something to have some ownership over just helps him to kind of focus, and he's actually seeing those numbers as we're moving across, and I want him to make sure he gets those concepts.
So he's engaged in the lesson. He's participating. He's doing what you're asking him to do. So those things are important. By doing those things, what are we doing for Daquan?
He's learning. I mean, we're teaching him and giving him an opportunity to excel.
Good. All right. So let's talk about the backwards counting that you did. What was the activity? You remember?
We were,
Spaceship.
So we were just practicing. I mean, that was obviously rope counting, but getting used to counting backwards is a big challenge. So the week before we started from a different number, and so like each week we've been progressing. And right now we're at 40, so we're going backwards from 40. Last week 30, going back from 30, 20, 10. So we're just moving forward. So they get to understand like what numbers are next, what's before this number, just kind of being able to manipulate numbers in that way. So.
All right. And so during that activity, that's exactly what we observed.
And so great too. You're using so many different modalities, which is really, really important, right? To keep them engaged doing all of those different tasks.
So during that time, how many scholars did you have on task?
I'm trying to think back to that. I feel like the majority of them were on task. At that time, I think maybe there were like 2 or 3 that weren't necessarily, they were running and I think reaching for the numbers, but they weren't really, I think, paying attention to what numbers that Daquan was pointing to. So maybe getting them to be a little bit more involved with actually pointing and making sure that they see the numbers and that they were able to say it. But
And how can we do that?
Yeah.
That's key. That's key.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
How can we ensure that our scholars are going to know that that's your expectation of them, for their hands to be pointing
Right.
and their mouths to be saying
Right.
and their eyes are
to
to
be
be
there.
in.
Doing the narrations, setting the expectation at the beginning, and then, narrating when I do see those who are participating in that proper way.
Yep. Bingo. That's it.
That's it. You just saved me.
Setting the expectation. Setting the expectation was really is your next step,
Mhm.
right? Because you're doing these fantastic, wonderful activities, and you want to get them all engaged in that work. Your narration is also, it's quick, it's within the moment, and I think that the next step really is the clear directions in the beginning. Right, with your clear directions in the beginning of where their hands should be, where their eyes should be, where their bodies should be, what they should be saying. With those clear directions, you're going to ensure that your narration is more purposeful.
Sure.
And you're going to ensure that 100% of your kids are with you. Because we noticed about 75% during that exercise, where you had, I think there were
Just 5.
Kayana,
Mm-hmm.
Darian, Raymond, and Savian.
Savian.
Savian. Yeah, and so, but I mean, you're close, right? Like, that's 4 more kids with clear, super clear, crystal clear directions.
Yes.
With the MVP, you'll get 100%, you'll have 100%, which is so exciting in doing the activities that you've so thoughtfully planned and that you're bringing such energy to. Yeah.
So that's our bite-sized feedback for
Thank
you.
you.
Is to
Yeah.
clear to script out your directions
Yes.
for each activity.
Yeah.
So what we want to do right now, we want to practice scripting out your directions for that activity, the
Okay.
backwards counting blast off.
Yeah. So specifically, you want to think about your directions for the activities that involve a lot of movement and voice, which you clearly bring to the classroom, and that's something you don't ever want to change because they love that and they're into it and they're moving and they're with you. But let's think about the directions and how we can ensure that those directions are clear, especially for those kinds of activities.
Okay.
So let's go back to that activity with the blast off, and let's script out the MVP for each one of those. The MVP for that activity. So what do you want students specifically doing with their bodies, doing with their voice, and then how do you want them participating?
Okay. So I want the scholars to be standing. Their bodies are facing the hundreds chart, so facing forward. And I guess it just depends on what kind of movement we're doing. Sometimes it varies. Sometimes we're kind of crouching. So if we were reaching for the numbers, then I need everyone's arms to be moving out. We're going to grab each number as we count. Make sure that your eyes are following Daquan as he's moving to each number.
Yep.
So we make sure that we grab all the numbers.
Are their feet moving anywhere?
Yes, their feet can move. They can stay in their place, but your feet are staying in your spot on the carpet. So you can move your feet.
They should be or they need to be?
They need to be in their own space.
Yes.
On the carpet.
It's a very specific nuance, but it's the more clear you are, the more successful they're going to be.
Yeah. That's
So
true.
if they know I can move around, but I need to be in my own space,
Setting
it gives
that
them
boundary.
freedom, but it sets that boundary.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that definitely would save me from a lot of having to redirect and everything. So yeah, that's true.
So write it down for you.
Oh. Okay.
So N for movement. And it's interesting because this morning when we were sort of debriefing the steps of no nonsense, you could clearly articulate the narration and the details behind that, and within 2 seconds you could also, you were really clear on the consequences and when to give consequences, but the one part where there seemed to be a bit of ambiguity was in the directions.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that this is sort of the next step moving
Definitely.
forward. Yeah. So maybe you think of breaking down the body into different components that you want to see from kindergartners. So where should their eyes? You think about eyes.
Okay.
Think about hands. Think about feet. Particularly with movement in that grade. Is that cousin? Yes, might hurt somebody. Yeah, perfect. Yep, perfect.
I'm trying to think. I guess it was more of a volume 2 we were in.
So let's be really specific with volume 2, right? So you want it to be like loud enough to hear, but soft enough to think, or something like that.
Okay.
For level 2, and you might want to practice that with them.
You said loud enough to speak?
Loud enough to
To
hear,
hear.
To hear.
and soft enough to
think.
think. Yeah. And then for P, participation, ultimately, this is sort of like the rigor piece of your direction, right? What do you want them doing? Do you want them counting? Everyone should be counting.
Yes.
Everyone should be what? Counting?
Yes. Everyone should be counting. Yes, everyone should be counting in order, staying together with the rest of the
There you
team.
go. Perfect. Even better. That was, I think, even more clear than everyone's counting. Because the goal is that there's no nuance in these directions, right? The kids are clear, and then you're clear with your narration, and then you can easily build in your narration to all the energy that you bring to the activity. You know, this whole entire call, this whole entire section is counting with me. You know, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Sounds good.
And so what we did was just we practiced, right? We practiced scripting out for that specific activity. But there are some activities that you do every day in your class, right? So I want you to take this clipboard,
Yes.
all right? And on the back, you're going to get some Post-it notes
And some clear tape.
and some clear tape. And for every consistent activity routine that you have in your class, you're going to write the MVP out for it.
Okay.
And so that it's easy for you just to flip this over and just go over your expectations for your scholars.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, that way you have the any of your repeatedly do's, because you get in the moment and we get so caught up, and sometimes we just need to have a resource on hand to flip over and look and say, okay, what were my directions for this activity that I'm going to do every day, and it'll just help you to have that resource.
Yes.
And it builds that consistency.
Yeah, it builds the consistency for the scholars too, because they know what the MVP is for everything. I've even seen teachers, this might be a future next step, but I've even seen teachers have MVP on their whiteboard, and then what the expectations are for each repeatedly do activity. If they're doing math on the carpet, or they're doing center work at their desk, I've seen teachers post that and post the directions that they've scripted out, so the students can see them too.
Okay.
But I think the first next step is to script these out and throw them on your clipboard.
Okay.
And so we'll follow up Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait. Wednesday, there's rollout.
Yeah.
Kimber.
Okay, one. So
Thursday.
Thursday.
I'll switch on Thursday.
Yeah.
So Thursday.
Okay.
And then maybe after you've scripted those out for your lesson tomorrow, maybe you can send those, your MVP directions for one of the activities in your lesson tomorrow, and send those to JC, and just CC both Steven and me so we can.
Could you repeat that again? Sorry.
Yeah. So choose one of the activities that you're going to do tomorrow.
Okay.
To repeatedly do. Script out the directions for that activity. Maybe one that involves lots of movement and volume. Script out the MVP for that and send it to JC by what would be a good timeline.
This is for my next activity tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. By tonight. Yeah. 6.